Welcome to the Holy Smokes Podcast, a show about faith, friendship, fine tobacco, and drink. I'm Steve Reiter. Voice is a little out of commission. I got COVID twice over the course of a month and been coughing a ton, and so you'll definitely hear that. But it's been a bit since I've recorded here at Lion's Den, and I had a Friday free, and I was like, I want to interview Jim Lavelle. Jim, thanks for coming on, my man.
I appreciate it. Not sure why that thought came to your head, but here we are anyways.
Well, I mean, okay, so one of the reasons is we've never really deeply had a deep conversation, but I like you. And in seeing you around, you seem like a really good dude. And you're the owner of Basil and Barley Pizzeria.
Sure.
On the north side of Colorado Springs, which honestly is one of my 2 or 3 favorite gluten-free pizza places in Colorado Springs. It's so good.
Glad to hear it.
I love going there, and I love bringing friends there. So I just wanted to learn more about you. And
sure.
So where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, west side of Cleveland, born and raised.
Tough being a Browns fan.
It's a brutal existence, but nonetheless I am. This year's a little better with the Guardians/Indians. Still hard for me to call them that because I grew up with that team. I went to those baseball games with my buddy. We used to ride the train into town, and you could watch a game and get a hot dog and a Coke for $5.
Yeah.
So we used to go all the time. As a kid who collected baseball cards and all that stuff. So near and dear to my heart. So happy to see those guys having a great year. Hopefully it keeps going. Sports was just an integral part of growing up there. So and then we moved to Austin in the end of 2009, Austin, Texas, which was a great town, great music, great food, you name it. We enjoyed it. Didn't so much enjoy the 107-degree summers, but And then we moved here to Colorado in 2015. So we've been here. I can't believe it.
Almost 10 years.
Almost 10 years. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
So a lot happened between when you were born and when you moved here in 2015. So what kind of home did you grow up in?
Mostly Catholic home, blue collar, lived in the suburbs of Cleveland. Wasn't a bad upbringing. It was, I always had my mom home. She stayed home, took care of us. Had a mentally handicapped brother.
Okay. Older, younger?
Younger. He was, had something called hydrosyphilis. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it's water on the brain type of thing. And in 76 or so when he was born, they didn't really have the tools to catch it. So by the time they sent her home several times saying, "Oh, he's just colicky, just send him home," And by the time they realized, his head's swelling a little bit, he had already acquired quite a bit of brain damage. So he was in a wheelchair, couldn't take care of himself. And they said he would only live till he was 7. And because of my mother's love, he lived till he was 34.
Holy catfish.
Yeah. So,
wow. Was there interaction with him? Was he communicative? Talk at all?
He couldn't talk, but you could definitely tell, talk about how God works in mysterious ways. I mean, I had said at the funeral that, you would think, what kind of existence is this? You can't talk, you can't interact, you're confined to a wheelchair, all these things. But I believe he kept my parents together for times in their marriage that were really difficult.
Really?
Because they both felt like he needed them. And then, you would walk into a room and he would just smile and when he heard your voice, so you knew that somewhere there he absolutely knew when you were around, which was interesting. So
now, how many other siblings?
Just a sister. She's still in Ohio.
Younger, older?
Younger, a lot younger.
Okay, so you're the oldest.
Yep.
All right.
I'm the oldest of about 50-something cousins, too. So
holy cow.
Irish Catholics, they went to work and had a lot of children.
Yeah.
So
what kind of, you grew up in a Catholic home?
Mm-hmm. Both parents were Catholic, so it made things a little bit easier. It's funny because the memories I have is, I went to Catholic school up until 4th grade, and I remember going to Mass with my parents, and, we went to this little mom and pop little breakfast place right by the church, and I used to just eat like stacks of pancakes, know?
Yeah.
And those are the things I remember. Is I always felt like that community is what I seeked when I got older, was hanging around the people we were at church with, not just over Mass, but afterwards to talk about what we just heard and eat all my pancakes.
So what kind of kid were you in high school growing up? Said sports were important. Did you play sports?
Oh, yeah. I played every sport imaginable. Ended up, I was a really scrawny kid. I think in my freshman year, I was already pushing 6 foot, and I weighed about 120 pounds maybe.
Yeah.
If you come to Basil and Barley and you see my oldest son working there, I was pretty much him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he, I wanted to play football really bad, but it just wasn't, our school was one of the ones that went to state. It was a very competitive football team. The kids, when I was a kid, seemed huge.
Yeah.
So I went the route of immersing myself in taekwondo and judo and played soccer.
Oh, wow.
And played baseball for a little while for like a rec team and that. I really enjoyed that. God, we used to play basketball like it was our job. Like we'd go out to there was an area behind the police station in a little town called Strongsville. There were 6 basketball courts back there, and if you won a game, you move up. If you lost a game, you go down. We used to go out there until 11 o'clock at night until the park lights shut off, and we'd be there from 10 o'clock in the morning just playing full court basketball all day.
Yeah.
And then I got into volleyball. Just silly enough, they had a beach volleyball court outside of our rec center. And we just started playing sand volleyball, just a group of kids, had no idea how to play volleyball whatsoever.
Yeah.
We decided to join a league, and we got completely annihilated every single game. And then I just said, I gotta figure out how to play this game. I just love it. And 25 years of playing volleyball, competing in beach volleyball tournaments and coaching, and then we eventually bought a volleyball, or we opened a volleyball club when we were in Austin, Texas. Shout out to Pure Energy Sports that is no longer around, but I loved it. We put 200 girls a year through that program and put dozens of girls through full ride scholarships to college. A buddy of mine, he had found out somewhere along the line, this was up by Fort Hood and Killeen, Harker Heights area, if you're familiar. And he found out that there were some like 2,400 unused scholarships every year for volleyball. He goes, "This is ridiculous. We need to do something." He goes, "I want to help the community around Fort Hood, which is kind of financially depressed a lot of times, and you got 2 parents that are serving." And he thought this would be a great way to get, we'd start a STEM program and teach kids, and then have it wrapped around sports and coaching.
Yeah.
And now some of those kids have become coaches and are grown up and having kids. It's unbelievable just to see the growth in some of these kids. So, all that sports that I did in a younger life, ended up, providing me the opportunity to do something that was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. Being able to coach those kids.
Yeah.
Sorry, I love coffee with my cigars. So.
Hey, go for it.
I think you might get to that question.
Oh, yeah. I'll definitely be getting to that one. So, what'd you do after high school?
Well, that's kind of an interesting question. Talk about thin threads in your life that move you one direction or another.
Yeah.
I was convinced I was going to be an industrial designer, and I wanted to design watches or cars.
Okay.
Got accepted into a pretty prestigious art school, but it was very expensive, and my parents couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And I ended up saying, all right, I'm going to take a couple of years off. I'm going to see if I can make a little money, and I'll just pay for it myself. So I took some, starter classes at Ohio State, and I just said, I'm going to just knock out these general courses, and then I'm going to get into my career. Well, 1 year turned into 2 or 3 years, and I fell into the mortgage industry, and I started making really good money. So I was like, well, maybe I'll just do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when we had our first kid, kind of felt like, I got to keep making good money. I can't. I never felt like I really had the time to go back to school.
Yeah.
So, which worked out.
Yeah. So you had a kid. What point did you meet your wife?
Oh, we met in high school. So we've been married and or together for almost 35 years now.
Dang, dude. Congrats.
Yeah. And
congrats. How old were you guys when you got married?
So we were older as we were going through that college courses and working and all that stuff. Our running joke was we were too busy to break up. So we dated for like 9 years before we got married. Yeah. So
wow.
It was just one of those things where, when we first started dating, I was 17, she was 18. So we, in a couple of years, we're going to be going off to college and, this will be great. But then that was kind of like the going back to college thing. And it's 2 years turned into 3 or 4. And then the next thing you know, I said, people wait their whole life to have a person they can just share space with and be with and enjoy their time together. I better stop being an idiot and lock this down, So I decided right then I was going to get a ring and marry her. So to go back, the funny story about how I met my wife, my best friend at the time really liked my wife's twin sister.
Yeah.
She wouldn't go out on a date with him unless her sister came along. And so he goes, "You're coming with me on this date." And I had just been in a relationship that ended poorly. Found out the girl was cheating on me, and all my friends knew, but I didn't know. I was the clueless guy, so I was not in the mood to date at the time.
Yeah.
And I was fine, I'll go on this date, So we end up going, we have a great time. We spend all of our time making fun of them too, because they were all lovey-dovey high school, holding hands and all that kind of stuff. And they didn't last much longer, but we got along really well. And I told my buddy, I said, I think I'm going to keep dating Debbie. She's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So, as they say, the rest was history.
35 years later, still going.
Yeah.
So, what took you so long? 9 years.
I know. We got a lot of that at the wedding.
You met when you were 18.
Yeah.
And then got married at 27 then?
Yeah, about that. Yep. Yeah, I was 27, she was 28, yeah. It was funny because my wife's family was very conservative Catholics, still involved in the church. Her dad still does handyman work and stuff like that. They were always heavily involved in the church. The kids were Eucharistic ministers and all that kind of stuff, right? We came home from the honeymoon and we said, I think we're pregnant. And you could see her mom like counting in her head, like, better be on the right. It was like everything's fine. Everything was. So year later we have a little child from the honeymoon. So
holy cow!
Which coincidentally was in Estes Park, Colorado. Which is one of the things that made me fall in love with Colorado and always wanted to live here. Is it was just absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. And in my head, I said at some point I need to live in Colorado. It's just awesome here. I remember waking up one morning and we were in these little cabins up in the Rocky Mountain National Forest, and they were kind of angled in a way that every cabin seemed like it had its own private space. There was a little creek that ran along the cabins, and I get my coffee and I walk over and I open up the window, and it's gently snowing, and there's like more elk than I can count. It must have been 50 elk just sitting there. Some are drinking from the river, and it looked like a postcard. The snow's like collecting on their back, and I just sat there drinking coffee going, whoa. There was a lot of talk about beach or mountains when we were talking about a honeymoon. I thought, forget the beach, man. This is awesome. But beach would have been fun too.
Beach is pretty good. If Colorado had ocean, it'd be unbeatable.
Be even more expensive.
So you're in the mortgage industry.
Yeah.
Got a kid, working.
Yeah, I decided
how'd your career trajectory go?
It's interesting. I decided to, well, actually it's pretty boring, but the choices though to move to the left or the right, to me, I look back and it blows me away that occasionally I made the right decision,
Yeah.
But when I was in the mortgage industry, it was around the time that the first financial crisis was about to happen, 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
A little before that, it was, if you remember, the mortgage industry was just booming. I mean, any monkey could answer a phone and sell a mortgage. The rates were low. And so I did well, and I thought, this isn't going to last forever. So I decided to get my financial services licensing. Mm-hmm. So I got my Series 7, Series 6, 63, all these different licenses to sell insurance and financial products.
Who were you working with?
At the time, I was working with Transamerica Financial. They were the ones who held my broker's license anyways. So I did that for a number of years. Really, really enjoyed that. I thought that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life because I really had a passion for helping people understand how money works. Yeah. Because my parents were middle class, had no idea. My dad rented for years. Well after I moved out, they finally bought their first house. Wow. Never had any retirement to speak of.
Really? What did he do?
He was like a warehouse manager for, 40 years or something like that. Yeah. Long time. But he, they just didn't understand how to invest or any of that stuff. So I consequently didn't understand. So got myself into really bad credit card debt. I had challenges with money all the time, and it weighed on me constantly, especially in our relationship. Even though my wife never gave me a hard time about it, I always felt I wanted to carry that mantle as the leader of the family, that I wanted to have that responsibility to be the guy who understood these things and understood how to take care of our family. And I didn't know where to go. So being able to provide that for families, being able to sit down at their kitchen table and look them eye to eye and talk about their financial situation and help them, even if some days it was just explaining to them how credit reports work and how they could improve their credit and how that would help them in all these different areas. Little things like that were a blessing. Mm-hmm.
How long did you do it?
Oh, I don't know. It was a while, maybe 7 years, 8 years, something like that. And then when the financial crisis hit.
And you were in Austin at the time, right?
No, this was before. That's exactly where I was going. Is financial crisis hits. I'm in blue collar Cleveland, Ohio. Nobody wants to talk about finances. Yeah. I went from making a nice 6-figure salary to literally making nothing because it was a 100% commission job.
Yeah, it is. Right? Yeah,
that was not great.
Yeah,
another really tough time in our family. And I remember sitting down with my wife in our living room, and I said, "Are we okay? Because if we're okay, I'll go back and work at Burger King or sell pencils on the corner, whatever it takes. But I just need to know you and I are okay."
Yeah.
Lots of tears, lots of talk about it. And I told her, okay, I have a plan. And started working for this medical device company, feeling a little beat up, right? You have this job, you feel like you have this career ahead of you.
You like it, you enjoy it.
I enjoy it. My customers we get along. Everything I kind of wanted in a career. And I felt like the rug just got pulled out from under me. Right? Yeah. Of no fault of my own, this thing is collapsing. And I was terrified that it was also going to collapse our relationship, as we had our third child at this point.
Yeah.
So we have 3 kids, no money. It was brutal. And my buddy calls me. He goes, hey, I need some help. Just moved over to Dell. I cover Lockheed Martin as an account. The salespeople I have aren't great. He goes, you and I have been friends since high school. This is the best buddy who introduced me to my wife.
Yeah.
He goes, you should interview for this job. I said, man, I'm not going to pick up my whole life and move. I can't even afford groceries right now. I can't afford to move to Texas,
Yeah.
I go, there's just no way. And he goes, just interview for the job. He goes, I think you're going to be awesome for it. So I go and I read Michael Dell's book. And there was another book I was reading at the time called Not Think and Grow Rich, which is another book I did read, though. But it was called Good to Great.
Yeah, Jim Collins, right?
I believe so. And it was all about CEOs or leaders of companies that came in, and a company was kind of down on their luck, and they come back and they reinvent the company, and off they go to be very successful.
Often, if I remember right, that's the book where the biggest success stories were CEOs that were brought up through the ranks and kept, rather than bringing in someone like Lee Iacocca. Sure. I think that was one of the stories of Lee Iacocca is brought in and Chrysler ends up in a really ultimately worse position.
Right.
But you bring up executives through the ranks and they can really help to take that company from good to great.
Yeah. So looking at this story, Dell had just acquired like 18 different companies. Recently, they had acquired Perot Systems, which you probably remember, Ross Perot, which is a big services company. And I thought, this is interesting. This might be, a lot of fun to be a part of a company that is reestablishing themselves and changing their identity and seeing where it goes. You know? And I had a lot of confidence in my friend. He was always very successful. And I said, well, I'm going to interview for this job. And the reason Think and Grow Rich came into my head is I've written resumes for many people, helped many people find jobs, and I completely stole the resume building thing from Think and Grow Rich. There's an piece in there where he talks about, don't blast 100 resumes out to places, pick companies that you want to work for, learn everything you can about the company, and then cater your resume specifically to the job you want and what value you think you bring to the company.
Yeah.
Right? So did that and ultimately got the job, and we picked up and moved our entire family shortly after bankruptcy to Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
And somehow finagled my way into buying a house, which I couldn't believe.
Yeah.
It was a couple years after bankruptcy, but we, my wife and I, a couple times were just laying in bed, and I thought, can you believe we're in Austin, Texas? Like, how did this happen, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, there we were, and that's what started my DoD career, working in government IT work, is moving out there, and ended up covering Lockheed Martin for years, and then eventually ran an account called Leidos globally for years, and I had a lot of responsibility and people on my shoulders, which was a little crazy, to think that you have all these professionals looking at you to lead them. But all those pieces intertwine, right? I thought the financial services, that was all a waste, but it wasn't. Building deals and understanding finance was helpful. Coaching and doing coaching for years was helpful in leading a team, even if it was a team of adults.
Yeah.
So all those things you talk about how God has a plan for you and you're on a journey. I wouldn't trade any of the difficulties that we had over the years, because it put me in position, as the line goes, I'm preparing you for a blessing, right?
Yeah.
I remember hearing that talk one time at a thing, and the guy at a seminar, and this guy was up there, and he was talking about, I think it's Job. He's in the desert, he lost his kids, and I'm always terrible at quoting scripture, but he finally is just crying out, like, what else can I do? I got nothing left. Like, I've given everything,
Yeah.
And he says, don't worry, I'm preparing you for a blessing. And that always hung with me. I was sitting in the crowd at that seminar, I'm just bawling, because I'm sitting there like everything is falling apart that we tried to build.
Yeah.
It's like, is this what's happening? Is it, maybe I'm not just giving myself over to God enough to say, okay, if it's time to move to Austin, Texas, then it's time to move to Austin, Texas, or Colorado, or subsequently wherever we go. So, and it worked out, so far.
So how'd you end up in Colorado? What were the circumstances that got you here?
Well, I'll give myself credit as my own divine plan. Because as I said, I wanted to be in Colorado at some point. So I ended up, when the Lockheed and Leidos, those two companies, Lockheed sold a huge chunk of their business, $6 billion, and Leidos bought it. And my VP at the time came to me and he said, I need you to run the Leidos account. And he said, I want you to move to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, or Dallas, Texas, or Florida. And I said, well, you're really not going to put somebody in Colorado, secretly always wanting to live here, So they have a data center out here. They've consolidated a lot of their business out here. And we've got people already covering the East Coast and Texas. So, why not have somebody on the West Coast? It's like, yeah, that's a good idea. Why don't we do that? And off I went. So, and then the guy who ran the federal division there, he was like, didn't I tell Tracy that you were supposed to work in rest of Virginia? And I said, there's no way I'm moving my family again. And there was no way my wife would let us move to the D.C. area. That did not sound like fun. So we ended up just putting roots here. Yeah. So I let my cigar go out too much babbling. I know my answers to your questions are too long.
It's normal. No, dude, it's normal. I was sitting through a whole bunch of interviews. I knew we were getting ready to do mine. I'm like, all right, I got to keep my cigar lit. And I didn't. It's totally normal. It's totally normal. So that's, and questions are a great time to relight and to get a couple puffs. So you get to Colorado and you're managing this account.
Yep.
What's next?
So, interesting. We talked about opening a restaurant or something when we were in Austin.
Yeah.
My kids always love cooking. I love cooking. And we thought, this could be a good investment, have something that creates some passive income that we could hand down to our kids at some point. We all enjoy it. My wife and I both worked in the restaurant business. That's where we met.
Yeah.
We were both in the restaurant business. So, we put it all on hold when we knew we were going to move here, right? And then when we were here, my son was getting a little bit older. He worked at a pizza shop. We were looking at some different options. And I said, maybe we'll look at a place for our own. And it was like trying to buy a house in Colorado Springs. There's a lot of businesses for sale, but a lot of people think it's worth a lot more than it actually is.
Yeah.
And so we struggled to find the right fit. And oddly enough, we weren't even looking at Basil and Barley. We knew about the place. We liked it. We knew the previous owner really well. And
so you weren't the owner that built?
Not the original owners, no.
Really?
Yeah.
They didn't have it very long, did they?
2018 to end of 2020, so about 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were trying to buy a place in downtown Monument, actually, and the deal was kind of going sideways. We kind of knew this probably isn't going to pan out, and we were talking to Roberto, who was the one who owned Basil at the time, and commiserating about the experience. And he said, well, I'm going to sell this place. And I said, I have no idea. Why are you selling it? He goes, both my parents are really sick back in Italy, and I'm worried they might both pass away. And in Italy, you got to go back and you got to take care of your estate, and he could be there for weeks or months. He doesn't know, right?
Yeah.
So I go, really? He goes, I'll put you in touch with my broker, and they were selling it dirt cheap.
Really?
And I thought, what an unbelievable opportunity this is, because it'll probably suck during COVID. There were still people masking, and there was towards the end of COVID, but it was still definitely present, right? So we took a look at his financials and the books and thought we could make this work and put our own little stamp on it and had some plans. And
it's not is it a franchise?
No.
Okay.
No, just the one location.
It's classy for really almost like a mom and pop place, a solo pizza joint, because the menus look really professionally done, and all the decor in there is it's a great place. I've got a buddy of mine up in Highlands Ranch who I brought him down one time. I'm like, let's go over to Basil and Barley. And he's like, I will come down to Colorado Springs for this pizza, because they used to have a pizza place kind of similar over in Highlands Ranch that kind of went under, and they closed it down. And he's like, I don't have anything like this in my neighborhood. And it's like, this is totally worth the drive.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we get people all the time come from Denver. We get people vacationing in Denver. They go and seek out pizzerias to eat at. And we for 3 years now, out of 4, we've been named the top 50 Neapolitan pizzerias in the U.S.
What?
Yeah, we were in the USA Today. We were in the Rob Report, and people will come to Denver and they know about our place. We were the only place ranked in Colorado. So when they get to Denver, they're like, one of the days we're going to go to Colorado Springs. We'll do stuff around there, but we're eating at this place to check it out. So it's cool, but it's also scary, right? You feel like you got to live up to everybody's expectations.
Yeah, totally. But I assume also part of that is, you said his name is Roberto. Mm-hmm. I assume that was a lot of Roberto's handiwork.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, we had the recipes and things of that nature. So we're fortunate to get a couple of months with him, and he used to teach the Neapolitana, Vera Napolitana class in Italy. So you would spend thousands of dollars to get a 1 week class with him.
Yeah.
And we were fortunate.
We got months.
We got months,
That's cool, dude.
So, all that helped. I mean, we understood pizza. We used to make pizzas at home. That was a fun thing we did with the kids is we would have pizza night, and we'd do the dough, and we'd make that. Everybody would be able to put their own toppings, and the kids all got to pick it out. And, they had to eat their creation because, they made it, right?
Yeah, totally.
But we just put toppings out and let them do whatever. And then the kids used to love doing that, right?
Yeah.
Probably don't love it now that they made 10,000 pizzas, a year or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all the kids are working there now, which 2 of them said they had no interest, but they actually, my daughter's like, I don't love it, but she goes, I make really good money there, and it's fun working with my family, and I like the people, and
that's
whatnot.
cool.
So that's cool. We're not dysfunctional yet from working together.
Yeah.
A lot of people ask me, like, how do you work in a restaurant with your wife? I'm like, you've always gotten along, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any plans to open a second?
Came dangerously close to doing it last year in Superior. A couple of buddies of mine that live up there, coincidentally enough, in the defense industry, have done well for themselves, and they loved our place, and they want to invest in something, and they said the same as your friend. They're like, we want this in our little town. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you know much about Superior, but they had the fire a couple of years back.
Yeah.
That I think it was over Thanksgiving, burned through a bunch of buildings and whatnot. They've rebuilt it all. Really nice downtown area with the amphitheater and a sports complex and all that. They wanted it there. And so we went and looked, and we did the whole business plan, but ended up getting a little railroaded because the person that we wanted to work to run it every day, because my wife and I weren't going to drive an hour and a half round trip to run it, right? They decided to go in a different direction, so we had to hit pause on that. But
possibly in the future.
For sure. Yeah, I'd like to maybe get 1 or 2 open before I hit 60. So I got about 8 years to figure it out.
But the top one in Colorado, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know,
so cool.
how it all works, but it's there's a lot of great pizzerias around the state. So
one of my favorites is Hops and Pie, kind of the west side of Denver.
Yeah,
it's a great shop, and downstairs at Eric's in Breckenridge is another favorite of mine that I love going to, and one that I just went to in Pueblo. A really good gluten. I'm gluten-free, and so really good gluten-free pizza that I was just, it was so good.
Yeah, people rave about our gluten-free dough.
It's awesome.
Yeah, we have a couple of really good friends, and their gluten is really tough on them. Yeah, I don't think they're celiac or anything, but it's just
an
tears
intolerance.
them up.
Yeah.
And we use the traditional Italian flour, so she even can eat some of our regular dough, and it doesn't mess with her that bad because it's just not like the overly produced American flour, if you will, right? But the gluten-free stuff, she just loves it. She's like, it actually puffs up. It's like an actual pizza crust instead of cracker like some places are. So,
yeah, those are gross.
Which don't get me wrong, I love a thin crust pizza from time to time, but other times I'm looking for a more traditional pie, if you will.
Oh, absolutely. So, Jim Lavelle, let's
Sir.
get to rapid fire questions.
Oh, okay.
Rapid fire. Fire here.
How's that stick treating you?
Very good. Yeah, we didn't even talk about the...
Yeah, I skipped my normal first question. What you smoking?
Well, this is Olmec.
Which you also shared with me.
Yep, my pleasure. And
thank you.
It is from Foundation Cigars, which does the Tabernacles and Goliath, and one of my favorite ones to say, it's the Wise Man, but it's pronounced Wednesday, which they're actually going to get rid of soon. But I love Foundation Cigars, so I had this one probably about a year ago, and it's one of my absolute favorite sticks.
Really? How'd you find out about it?
Actually, I think I had the opportunity to go to the Premium Cigar Show in Vegas, and at the Foundation booth, they gave me one. And I remember walking away, smoking it, and thinking, "What is this? This is fantastic!" Because it's got a lot of kind of chocolate notes and nice medium to full flavor that hits my palate just the ways. Because to me, it goes really well with a bourbon or a rum or a cup of coffee. Right?
Yeah,
it's versatile in that way. So one of my favorite cigars, absolute favorite cigars. So
when did you first try cigars or pipe?
Oh yeah. So I got into cigars not too long ago. I hear a lot of. I listened to a few of the podcasts, and some folks were smoking cigars in school, like college, or when they were really young. I only got into cigars about 8 or 9 years ago, and it was due to the government IT work.
Yeah.
And I remember trying cigars. Always hated them. Of course, the cigars I usually had was some guy gave me a cigar out of his golf bag while we're on a golf course, and it was probably in there for 3 years and super dry. And the next day I woke up feeling like somebody took a cotton ball and rubbed it into an ashtray, and I slept with that in my mouth. Like, and I thought, oh God, why does anybody do this? We were meeting a bunch of executives at Cigar Lounge in DC, and there was a guy there. It was a fancy place. Used to Civil Cigar Lounge, closed during the pandemic, which is very unfortunate because I used to love that place. And guy was in the humidor, walking humidor with a 3-piece suit, bow tie, and he just looked like he was ready to answer some questions. And I was happy to oblige. So I walked in. I said, "Look, I got executives coming in here. I don't want to look like an idiot. I don't really smoke cigars. Like, help educate me." Right? He goes, "Well, what'd you have for dinner?" And I said, "Well, I had a steak." He's like, "Yeah, nice big red wine, bold wine." I said, "Yep." I go, "Why does that matter?" He said, "Well, all those tannins and the fats from a rich meal like that, they're going to linger on your palate, and it's going to affect the flavor of your cigar." And at that moment, my uncle had been in the wine business since 1972. I understood the idea of like there's a premium level of something, and then there's like the day-to-day, or low ends of things, right? And that it just clicked with me like, wait a minute, this is a lot like wine. There's so many different variations and whatnot. And the discussion with this guy about the different types of tobacco and the wrapper and the binder and the filler and how they all affect the flavor. And then we talked about pairing, and he said, what are you gonna pair with this? And I said, well, Talisker is doing a Scotch tasting, so I was going to drink some Scotch and pick one, and that's what I was going to smoke in my cigar. So I have no idea how to pair what cigar goes good with like a Scotch, right? He said, well, do your tasting. He goes, but you're going to get a Talisker 18 year, and you're going to smoke this cigar. I don't remember what it was. I wish I did. But I said, okay. And it was one of those places where the young lady brings out on a silver tray with a cutter, and she cuts it for you, she toasts it, hands it to you. You take a couple more puffs, and she makes sure everything's lit, and then walks away. And I've got my Talisker 18, and I take a sip, and I'm like, wow, that is one of the best scotches I've ever had. Take a puff of my cigar, I'm like, oh, never had a cigar like that. That's incredible. Right? Go back to the Talisker, and all of a sudden the flavor of the Talisker is different than the first sip I had. And the flavor of the cigar, when I go back to the pub, they started really complementing one another. And at that moment, I just thought, oh, I have to find my cigars, my pairings, for my palate, and the search continues day to day. But now I found a lot of cigars and spirits that I just absolutely, it's one of those things that just puts you in a good place where you can calm down from a crazy day and enjoy some of the finer things in life. So
I distinctly remember the first time a friend of mine told me to pair a cigar. He gave me a one-off by, it's now made by Illusione. At the time, I don't remember who it was made by, but he told me to pair it with a Coke. And I remember sitting in my garage and then doing a little walk through the neighborhood, just taking a sip of the Coke and a puff of the cigar, and all of a sudden the flavors of the Coke just exploded. And it was like, whoa, I've never tasted Coca-Cola like this before. And the cigar just went right with it, and I was like, all right.
I know a lot of guys that, for whatever reason, there's try not to drink or whatever that. But it could just be a preference thing too. Coke and root beer. Yeah. I know a lot of guys that do root beer with their cigars, and they prefer it over any other beverages.
Yeah, I've had guys, and I think I've had one or two on the podcast that they say their favorite pairing with a cigar is Dr. Pepper.
Yeah.
And there's something about just that sweetness and the flavors in the soda.
It's one of the reasons I love rum so much with cigars. Now over the years, rum and tequila are probably my favorite pairings.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes they're a bit sweeter. So I like experimenting with taking one of the most bold butt kicker of a cigar, if I'm allowed to say that on the podcast.
You can say a lot worse, but...
I usually say a lot worse. But I love taking a bold cigar and pairing it with a sweeter, aged rum. I like to say rum old enough to buy its own rum, 21 years or older. And, that some of those pairings have just been mind-blowing. It's really just brought out, I think, the best of both of them, So it's great.
You ever try pipe?
All the time, yeah.
Okay,
got a really nice pipe. Love it.
Nice.
Yeah. Talk about a whole nother habit that could take you down a rabbit hole of trying different tobaccos and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I've lately in the last year really been smoking much more pipe tobacco than cigars.
Yeah. My wife. Well, pipe takes me right back to my grandfather. He always smoked pipe, and so did my wife's grandfather. So my wife is one of the spouses that actually cigar smoking doesn't really bother her, and pipe smoking she really likes because it just takes her right back to her childhood with her grandfather. So. Yeah. Every now and then when I just have 45 minutes or so, I'll, just smoke a pipe for a little bit and that'll be fine. So.
Yeah. I remember when I first got into Holy Smokes, Elizabeth would make me shower, change, brush my teeth, all that. And then it started to change a little bit. And I remember getting a pipe and she was like, you can smoke a pipe in your office.
Oh.
You can smoke a pipe in your office because that little bit of smell that goes throughout the house, she's like, totally reminded her of her grandpa. And she was like, and she liked some of those pipe blends that I had got. And so I still do that once in a while. I'll smoke a pipe in my office and just open up the window and let it air out. And
sure.
Next day, 2 days later, it's completely gone.
Yeah, my wife hasn't told me I can't smoke in my office, but I haven't pulled that trigger yet. I'd rather just take my laptop out in the backyard and I've got a gorgeous view of the mountains, so I'll just enjoy a...
What area of town do you live?
I'm in the Jackson Creek area Monument, so I'm right.
Got it. Yeah.
I'm probably 10 minutes from here at the Lion's Den. So,
what's your favorite cigar and pipe tobacco?
Well, based on everything we just talked about, it changes. Changes on what I'm in the mood for. It changes on what I'm drinking. What I'm eating. This Olmec is probably currently my absolute favorite.
Yeah.
In fact, I bought a whole box when I was just in Tampa. Thought that would last me a little while, and it was gone. And I gave a few away. For a sad story, unfortunately. But I ended up having to buy another box, and when I went and brought these two, I only have one left. I'm like, dang it, it didn't last very long.
Got to get another box.
But my day to day, if I'm just gonna have a cup of coffee and smoke a cigar, has been the EP Carrillo. The Allegiance. Okay. It's got kind of a green wrapper.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it before it was the number 5 cigar of the year on Cigar Aficionado last year, or this year. It was listed number 5 because it was an $8 stick.
Yeah.
Now it's a $15 stick, roughly $12 to $15. So unfortunately, it was cool that I was like, oh, I must have some taste because, this got recognized as one of the better cigars out there. But that was my go-to. I notice a lot of guys on the podcast, they smoke Nica Rusticas. That's one of my favorites. Another day-to-dayer that I enjoy. Sobra Mesa has a couple good smokes that I really like. I don't know if you've had those. Kind of has a little crown on it. It's a Holy Smoker favorite. There's a few that smoke that one. That hang around here on our gathering days, if you will.
Yeah.
So those are probably my go-tos now, but... if I really want to spoil myself, I love the Plasencia line. The box press, black label, Toro is absolutely one of my favorite smokes. But I also like, going back to that big bold, if you've ever had I think it's called the flying feral pig.
No.
From Liga Privata. It's only like I think it's maybe a 4 or 5 inch, it might even be 4 inches.
Yeah.
Tapered on both ends. It's got the little pigtail, that's why they call it the flying pig. And that one is just packed with flavor. But for a 4-inch cigar, you better set aside 2+ hours because it will take that long to smoke it. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And it's just so good. From the first light till it's burning your fingertips, it's unbelievably tasty.
I have to try that one out.
Yeah.
Most expensive cigar you ever smoked?
Probably the El Septimo. We had one again at that premium cigar show. It was about $150 a stick. And the unfortunate thing is I didn't really care for it.
Yeah.
I thought they had another one in their lineup that was like $80 I liked a lot better. But coincidentally, the lower end line in the El Septimo line is I enjoy a lot more. So I've had a few cigars now that are over $100 a stick. And I would say I probably wouldn't buy any of them again. There's actually a really good YouTube video about that. The Cigars Daily guys talked about smoking these super expensive cigars. And the prevailing thing was like, it was an experience. I enjoyed it, but not sure I would do that again.
Yeah. What's your best dollar for dollar stick that you go for in your humidor?
You know what's an underrated dollar for dollar stick? It's called a Perla del Mar, the Corojo. It's about $5 a stick.
Really?
Yeah. Pairs amazingly with bourbon. And it's a great smoke. And it's like $5.
Yeah.
You know? It's fantastic. Before that, what was it? I think it was I can't remember. It was another stick that's like $3. That's it's wrapped in a white cellophane. I think it's like something Del Rey. I haven't bought them in a long time, but another buddy of mine who's kind of in between jobs and that's his. He's like, these are the ones I can afford right now, and he gave me one. I'm like, I'd buy these even if I could afford a $100 cigar. These are fantastic.
Yeah.
I'll have to, maybe we'll edit in the name of it when I remember.
Where's your go-to place to get your smokes?
Well, I have a fortunate thing that I travel still quite a bit in my government IT work, and I'll buy cigars on the road for people that may want one. So I leave some in the DC area because I'm in the DC area all the time, but a few might trickle their way home. And then those are nice because they're on an expense report, so that's not bad. But I was buying a lot from Cigar Page. I get some from Stag or some from Zen, Cigar Lounge. So I've been down to Triple D's a couple times. So I like to try and support all the local businesses around here. So even if I thought their cigars were a little pricey, I'm going to buy a couple of sticks and put them in there. But usually if I'm buying a box, I'll usually buy them from Zen, or I'll buy them from Cigar Page or something like that. Cigar Bid sometimes, but I don't have the patience for a Cigar Bid sometimes.
Favorite liquid pairing with your smoke?
How much longer do we have on this podcast?
We can keep going. We can keep going. So I assume it's probably depending on what you're in the mood for, but you did say you were getting into some rums.
Yeah. Well, definitely.
Tequilas as of late.
Yeah, rums and tequilas. Tell you, if you want to spend a little bit of money, the Diplomatico Ambassador, or there's another rum called, I think it's Luxor or Luxus. It's got a little sea turtle on it.
Yeah.
Both of those will run you about $260, $300 for the bottle.
Yeah.
But holy cow.
Really?
They are absolutely incredible.
Really?
I'm going to blame my friend Kuha'i for introducing me to really expensive rum. Because one of the reasons I loved rum is you get some very, very good rum for like $60 a bottle. In that Diplomatico line, they have a couple different rums that I really like. But their baseline, it's in a green bottle. It's like $40, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Bourbon-wise, man, that changes a lot based on whatever I've had recently that's just been really good. Coincidentally, and this isn't a shameless plug for the restaurant, but I did a barrel pick for a whiskey, a rye whiskey called Sextro from a distillery called Iowa Legendary, which makes whiskey in a pre-prohibition way. No GMOs, all organic. They try to stick to as close as they can when they made it in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Really?
And a friend of mine that lives here in Colorado Springs, it's his great-great-grandmother and grandfather that started the distillery. They were a rival bootleg family to the Templeton family that you're probably familiar with, Templeton Rye.
Yeah.
Well, he brought his lineup of things to the restaurant, and man, there was one that just stood out, and it blew my mind. And he's like, we do barrel picks, and we do smaller barrels, so it's only like 60 bottles. You don't have to get 300 bottles, right? And I said, I'm in. Let's do it. And lately, that is my go-to. When I've got 90 bottles of different things in my bar, I've been reaching for that one time and time again because it's a little sweet, but it's got just a great mild spice to it and very complimentary, especially to the Olmec that I've been smoking a lot more lately. So, yeah. So that's probably the go-to these days.
Who's the most interesting person you've met through cigars?
Gosh. I've heard you ask that question. I've tried to put some thought behind it. And I decided I'm going to answer it this way. What's fascinating to me about a cigar lounge, the way it opens you up to having a conversation with a complete stranger. And we all have the cigar to start a conversation and have a lot of discussion like we just had, our favorite pairings, our favorite cigars. And I've met just amazing people over the years. And sometimes that's the only conversation I've ever had with them. I'll tell you what I mean in a quick story. I was in Huntsville, Alabama. It was the end of the night. We just had a good meal. I had to do a little bit of work, so I decided to go to this local cigar lounge in downtown Huntsville called Sip. And I sit down, and I'm enjoying my cigar, and this guy comes in, and turns out I won't say what he does because it's actually, he works in a pretty classified environment, but it's interesting because now we're in the same industry. But he's there with his son, and his son's wife is in the hospital having their first baby. And so they decided to come to the cigar lounge, and his dad was going to share a cigar with his son. So, of course, I was like, I'm buying this cigar, and I'm getting you guys a drink, and we're going to just celebrate life, And we sat there for 2 hours and talked to his son about cigars and cigar culture and and all that kind of stuff. And it was a really amazing experience because I decided to go to a cigar bar and have a cigar. I mean, I could sit here for hours and tell you about experiences like that over and over and over again. Yeah. People I've met in cigar lounges that are just amazing folks, whether it's El Paso, Texas, or Huntsville, Alabama, or DC, or whatever, right? It's incredible the folks you meet in a cigar lounge. And I've never met a person that I walked away and said, God, that guy's an asshole. There's not a lot of those in a cigar lounge. No. We're all there for the same reason. We're there to relax.
Yes.
And take a few minutes to just take a deep breath, Yeah. So, anyways, that's my answer as best I could do.
All right, the non-cigar questions. Marvel or DC?
I think Marvel makes the better movies. Was never a huge comic person growing up, so I won't say that I have a preference one way or the other, but I love Guardians of the Galaxy, so I guess I have to lean on the Marvel side. They are Marvel, right?
Yep. Star Wars or Star Trek?
My dad was always Star Trek, and I really appreciated him, but I was a Star Wars kid, It was the first movie I saw in the theater. It was with all my friends. We went and blew me away when I was a kid. And
how old are you?
I'm 52.
Okay.
And then when Empire Strikes Back came out, I was just like, I was hooked.
That was my first movie I saw in the theater, and it blew me away.
Yeah.
It blew me. I remember coming home. I was in first or second grade. My mom looked at me and she was like, "You gonna be okay? You gonna have nightmares?" I was like, "No, I want to go back. I want to see it again. Let's go. I want to see it again."
Yeah. It was pretty scary though, like snow monster, the Yeti in the cave. That was
Sports teams, obviously Cleveland stuff.
Yeah.
Talked a little bit about that. Ohio State, I assume.
Yeah. Yep. Ohio State, which is I'm sure people love to hate that, but Yeah, I've always, even when we moved here was the year the Broncos won the Super Bowl. And everybody's like, "You're a Broncos fan now?" I'm like, no, because every failure montage of Cleveland sports, I have to watch the drive and the fumble and the comeback and the Broncos ripping my heart out when I was a kid.
Yes. Yeah.
And I said, "There's no way in hell I will be a Broncos fan."
I'm totally in the same boat. My first Super Bowl here was Packers, Broncos.
Yeah.
And when the Broncos beat the Packers, and I just moved from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And
it's brutal.
Like just like 6 months earlier, I'd moved in from Wisconsin, and to sit in a house where I was only one of two Packer fans, surrounded by Bronco fans. It was heartbreaking.
They're sitting there cheering.
It was the most heartbreaking.
All the Midwest teams, I feel a kindred spirit with. The Packers, the Bears, even the Steelers, which are our big rival. I don't hate the Steelers. I hate the Ravens because they stole our football team and then won 2 Super Bowls with it. Yeah. So I really hate the Ravens. And then, so all the Steelers and Bengals fans, we all have that in common, that we all hate the Ravens. It's like, I'm sure you guys love the Dallas Cowboys, right?
Oh, God, no.
Or the Vikings.
Actually, my best friend's dad growing up in high school, he just instilled in us, you cheer for your division.
Yeah.
You cheer for your division.
Sure.
Except when the Packers were playing the Bears or the Vikings or the Lions or at the time the Buccaneers, which weren't a team really much at all back in the early 90s, late 80s. But he just instilled that in us. You cheer for your division, you cheer for your conference, because you want to come out of the best division, you want to come out of the best conference. And so I have a deep, and plus my hometown, tiny town, 30 miles north of Madison, Partyville. Mark Bortz was born and raised and went to go play football at Iowa, and then was drafted by the Chicago Bears, and he won a Super Bowl. Yeah. And he was an All-Pro in 1990 or 91, I believe, and just an amazing run blocker. Yeah. And our town was always very split. We always cheered for the Bears when they weren't playing the Packers, and when they were playing the Bears were playing the Packers, it felt like half the town was Bears fans. Yeah. Because of Bortzy. We wanted to see Bortzy win, and we wanted to see him get a Super Bowl, and we wanted to see him have success. Yeah. And so growing up, I always had a deep respect for the other NFC North teams. Sure. And so, kind of similar. Yeah, that's great. Kind of similar. Yeah. Favorite athletes growing up?
I never got into idolizing sports folks, right, of any sport. I appreciate them. I thought they were amazing for their talent. But oddly enough, as much as I played, kind of the common sports, baseball, basketball, football, the Olympics were always the things that inspired me the most. Ooh. Like, I remember when Michael Phelps was doing what he was doing, and I was in awe. In awe. Yeah. I mean, just incredible. And now Katie Ledecky, she's just incredible. Yeah. And even, they've raced well into the ages that you're not supposed to do that, right? Mm-hmm. And they're still competitive at the highest level. And I guess the reason being is, baseball, for example, you can have a bad night. Football, you can have a bad week, right? You train 4 years, sometimes your entire life. And Simone Biles, for example, has to go out, and she's the last person. No one else is competing right now. She's out on that, in this recent Olympics. She's out on that floor, and she has to nail this one last routine. And managed to not get injured this whole time, managed to not get sick, managed to be at the highest level of competition at that one moment. And everything has to come together for that minute and a half or whatever for you to win that gold medal. We all know, anybody who's competed or anyone who's tried to do anything professional in their life, knows that anything can go wrong at any moment. Yeah. And for Olympians to just pull it together for that moment in time and be better than anyone else in the world just blows my mind. It blows my mind. I have the utmost respect for them. It's how many circumstances of events have to fall into perfect alignment for that to happen, right? Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's not just an individual. They have a team of people around them helping them, right? So it's, even though it looks like an individual out there competing, family has sacrificed, coaches have sacrificed and put in the time and the work, trainers and whatnot. It takes a village to do that too. And I think that adds to the stress because that person has a weight on their shoulders. You've heard them say it in posts, in interviews afterwards where they say, I have to thank all the people who got me here, because that weight has to be on you thinking, I can't let everybody down. Mm-hmm. Like, I have to do this, Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember a few years back when the USA track and field relay team, they dropped the baton when they were highly touted that they were just going to blow away the field. Yeah. And they screwed up the handoff of the baton. One little my finger just didn't quite grab it right, and all that work undone in one little slip.
Yep.
That's what blows me away, is that they could actually pull it together, Anyways.
Yeah.
Mad respect for those folks.
What kinds of music do you love?
Oh, God. If you wanted to talk for an hour and a half about something other than cigars and drinks,
music
would be the other subject.
You were just at a show last night up in Boulder.
I was, yeah.
You got in late, you said.
Yeah, not 100% today, so I don't know how this podcast is going to turn out.
It's good. It's good.
Look, music is my first love. When I was in Austin, I play the drums still to this day.
Oh, wow.
And Austin was just such a great town to be in. Everywhere you went, there was live music, unbelievable talent. And I ended up getting roped into playing in a band, which I said I wouldn't do because I didn't have the time. 3 kids and a new job. I thought there's no way. And I was so glad I did because
creative outlet.
That time to think about something else and to put put yourself into a different environment was amazing. So right now I've been into like blues and rock type sound. The band we saw last night, their band's name is Mo Lauda and the Humble. Probably encapsulates what my favorite music is right now.
Which is
that blues rock sound, right? So bands like the Black Keys, or there's a band called Kaleo. It's Kaleo out of I can't remember the name, but anyways, they're up Iceland. They're up in Iceland originally. They came from, but great bluesy sound, amazing voice, just talented individuals. And I grew up kind of a heavy metal prog rock kind of guy. Like I grew up with Rush and band called Dream Theater and stuff like that. And,
remember them?
Yep. And even Metallica and stuff like that. Those are kind of some of the things I grew up with. So I've always leaned towards just incredibly talented musicians or that soulful bluesy sound, because a lot of those guys like Led Zeppelin and that, they were rooted in blues.
Yeah.
And my dad was a big classic rock guy, so he loved the Eagles and all those kind of bands. So that was my childhood, and it just has developed from there. So yeah.
What's your favorite food?
It'd be silly if I didn't say pizza, right? No, I do love a good pizza, but probably a really well cooked, dry aged, bone in ribeye, is absolutely wonderful, because part of it is I know after I have this meal, I'm going to smoke a really good cigar as well. And that's all going to come together in a great moment. So,
dogs, cats, neither, or both?
I have a cat. She's amazing, totally chill. But I'm probably more of a dog guy.
What's your breed? Dogs. What's your dog breed or breeds?
Probably like a Alaskan Malamute or Siberian Husky, something like that. Yeah, love them. But I was just over a friend's house, and they had a pit bull, and he was such an amazing dog. Just so nice, so smart. And thought, man, pit bulls get a bad rap. Like, this dog is amazing.
He'd be so sweet.
Yeah. And, they have the side benefit. If somebody tries to do something to you, they'll probably rip their face off.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Did you have a nickname growing up or in college?
Never did. Yeah, never did. People just call it, the closest it got was they just manipulated my name and said Lavelle. Because when I was considering going to the Army, the recruiter kept calling me Lovely. Because they always come up with something, to make fun of you. But But nothing ever stuck, so it was just either Jim or James, and people interchange those with how many Jims or Jameses they know. So if they got to compartmentalize me into the Jim side, then I'm a Jim. And I don't have a preference either way.
That's funny.
Yeah.
What's one unusual fact that few people know about you?
I have one that's not very complimentary, but it happened completely incidental. What the hell? I may or may not have spent a week in a medium security prison.
What? All right, let's hear the story.
Yeah, I don't know if I can get into all the details.
You
can
give an overview.
It has to do with I was going to see some friends that were going to the University of Toronto, and from Cleveland to Toronto it's like a 5-hour drive. It's not a big deal. And I was 18 at the time, and I had what the Canadian government considered contraband in my trunk that I had completely forgotten was there because I was helping somebody move some stuff for a business, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And they asked us to pull over to the side, and my poor friend who was in the car with me, we were sequestered and questioned and cuffed, put on a bus, put in a medium security prison, and we were there until our court date, which was 7 days later, and it all got dismissed. And I had to call my dad, and he got an attorney, and they basically were like, hey, "This is what's happening. Like, these kids weren't trying to do anything wrong." And
was it Canadian prison or U.S. prison?
It was a Canadian prison for sure, but most of the people there were something to do with prison. But we were in the medium security part was like we weren't in with hardened criminals. They were the scary part though is they were kind of crazy people. Like they were people that were like mentally not there and stuff. So you're in a general population area where there was 30 people sleeping in the same giant room, and people some guy would just randomly yell out something, or he would be pacing around the entire. I didn't sleep for 7 days. I was like, I'm going to get shanked in this place or something. Like I was terrified.
Whoa.
Side note, that'll prevent you from ever doing anything bad again.
No kidding.
I'm like, I don't want to experience that ever again.
Yeah.
It was terrifying. None the worse for wear.
Yeah.
Okay.
How old were you when that happened?
18.
Holy catfish.
Yeah, it was scary.
That's a big wake-up call for life.
No, it was. Check your trunk if you ever go across the border.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Don't leave stuff in there that shouldn't be coming across the border.
Yeah. So you're a reader. Favorite 1 to 3 books not titled the Holy Bible?
I went down a path of trying to better myself for a long time. And I was in Amway for a while.
Yeah.
And they were highly promoted reading.
Oh yeah, big time.
At the time, I didn't read anything. I remember the first few books they recommended was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, How to Win Friends and Influence People from Dale Carnegie, and they recommended an Augmentino book called 12th Angel. I don't know if you ever read it. If you don't feel like crying in one afternoon, don't read it, because it touched me right my soul.
Yeah.
And I remember I read the How to Win Friends and Influence People last out of the books I recommended initially, because I thought, like, I don't want to win friends. And what a weird book. Like, I don't, it seems like such a contrived thing. Like, I'm going to win friends and I'm going to influence others. Like, that's just not my character. What I didn't realize is the book isn't about that at all. It's really about, like, understanding yourself and the fact that you're sitting here worried about, like, how you're perceived by others, and that person sitting in the other chair worried about how they're being perceived by everybody else, and both of you are worried about it, but really you're not judging the other person or saying something about the other person, so it was an amazing book, and I'm so glad I read it. But I still go back to some of those books sometimes and pull them off the shelf just to sharpen the saws, if you will,
What's the last great book that you've read?
It was, I don't know if I would consider it great, but I enjoyed it a lot. And it was interesting the way they wrote it, but it was called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Lencioni, something like that.
Patrick Lencioni.
Yeah, Lencioni, thank you. And they told it in more like a parable. So it's kind of like how to develop a team, but it was told in a way like this gal was in the automotive industry and she moved to Silicon Valley and took over this tech company, and now she has these very successful in their own right, very recognized leaders in her direct reports as the CTO and the chief of engineering and all these things. But it was told more in a story format of how she vetted these folks and how some were going to be there and some weren't, and some needed to develop to be a part of the team that she wanted. And there was a lot of pushback because they felt she doesn't understand Silicon Valley. She's not from here. Mm-hmm. She's from the automotive industry. Is completely different, Yeah. I couldn't put it down. I read it in like a day and a half because I just wanted to see how it all panned out, you know. So that was probably the last really good one. And on the fun side, I'm reading a book called Dungeon Crawler Carl right now, which is hilarious. So,
really?
Yeah. I'll let you look it up, but it's a good book. There's 7 books in the series, and I'm on book 5 very quickly because it cracks me up.
That's awesome.
So another smoking a cigar, having a cup of coffee, and I'll pull that out and read it. So it's quite hysterical.
Nice.
I don't know if it's Holy Smokes approved. It could be pretty brutal at times, but it's funny nonetheless.
That's good. That's awesome. Do you have a life scripture? Or one that really just kind of speaks to you right now at this stage in your life?
I don't right now. It's one of the things as you talk about constantly trying to grow as a person. My involvement with folks in the Holy Smokes has rekindled my desire to get back to the Bible, get back to Scripture, be more involved in the church, because we had faded a little bit away from that. So I wouldn't say I have something currently, but certainly part of the soon-to-be journey.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Let's talk about your faith journey, your spiritual. You said you've kind of grew up Catholic.
Yep.
Kind of how has your faith evolved over the course of your life?
So, when I was younger, I got really frustrated with the church, especially as I got into my late teens, early 20s. I wasn't sure the direction of my life, and at that point, you're not going to church with your family as much anymore. So I'm fortunate that, I was with my wife, whose family was very spiritual, and I stayed with them, right? Going to church with them sometimes.
Yeah.
And I just got really frustrated with the Catholic Church and walked away from Catholicism completely after a while. And went on a bit of a spiritual journey trying to figure out, because I felt hypocritical. I feel like I believe in God, I believe in Christ, I feel like I've been saved, all those things, right? But there's something wrong here. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I decided to go see what other religions are out there, see what other things are more in alignment with what I felt like right was.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to phrase it.
Yeah.
But so I looked at a lot of things: Buddhism,
really,
Zoroastrianism, Hinduism, Muslim, other areas of Christianity. And funny enough, through music, I believe God spoke to me and put the band Jars of Clay in front of me.
Mm.
And the first album of Jars of Clay, I think the album was called Flood. There were songs that would make me weep because they just spoke to me. I felt like the lyrics were just incredible.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it caused me to go back and look and say, you know what? When it comes to the teachings of Christ, I have no issues. Mm-hmm. My issue is with the modern church.
Yeah, I get it.
And interestingly enough, I would share my story with folks, and a friend of mine said, you should come to my church. Still a Catholic church, St. Joe's in Strongsville, that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
He said, you should come to my church. I said, okay. And that's ultimately the church that baptized my 3 kids and we got married in. And what ultimately it was is they used to have donuts and coffee and Kool-Aid, and they did this ministry for the children. So in the middle of Mass, all the kids would leave before the readings, and they would go off and they would get taught in a way that kids could digest, either by coloring or crafts or things like that, the scripture, while all the adults, and then they'd bring them back. And then afterwards, we'd all meet for, snacks afterwards. The kids all loved it. And it created that community I was seeking from when I was a child, that we spoke about earlier, right? So it just brought me right back into my faith, And then we were rocked again when my wife's mother passed away from pancreatic cancer, and that's been...
How long ago was that?
About 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
And that's been a challenge we're still navigating to this day. It really, my wife prayed a lot at that time, and she felt her prayers went unanswered, and she's struggling still with immersing herself back in her faith. But I'm feeling this pull that it's time, we need to get back in it, and she needs it, One other quick story, if you have any doubt that there's a God and he's always watching out. We went back to Mass after probably a year or two of not going, and the opening song was my wife's mom's favorite song.
Oh, wow.
And they're singing it, and I'm standing there, and I am making direct eye contact with the altar. I'm like, I cannot look at her right now because she is going to be bawling her eyes out. Yeah. And sure enough, man, I kind of glanced over. I'm like, oh, God. Like, I can't right now. That whole Mass, it felt like it was her mother talking directly to her and saying, it's okay. Man, it was...
We know where she is.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when she's ready, I think she'll be back. But these days we're both still very grounded, and it hasn't said, I don't believe there's a God, or I don't believe in Jesus. He let me down, any of that. It's just, it's hard.
It's natural.
Right now.
It's natural.
Yeah. I really wish she would have come to the conclave, because the talk they did on Sunday at the conclave, that was powerful.
I've got it recorded.
Yeah.
So.
Oh my gosh, it was really, really great. So, yeah. Anyways.
Have you or someone you deeply trust ever experienced something extremely unusual? Could be something spiritual, could be UFOs, UAPs are in the news, something just unexplainable.
Sure. Well, I felt that moment I just described was one, but also I'll go back to another book that I read. It's kind of controversial in the Christian world, but it was called The Secret. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie or read the book.
Yep.
And a lot of it, the reason it's controversial is it kind of, not to be a spoiler, but The Secret is the law of attraction, and it gives a little bit of, it puts a lot of, you have ultimately control over everything. It doesn't talk about how God is working through you. So, but when I read The Secret, I took it that way. So whether you call it the universe or whatever you refer to it, I said, I believe that's the Holy Spirit working through me and using the law of attraction to bring people into your life when you need them most, to bring the Holy Spirit into your life when you need it most. And it talked about gratitude and having an attitude of gratitude, and how, when the devil in your life, you're jealous and you're resentful and you're angry and all those things. And then the reason I say that up, the weird thing that I've experienced is that suddenly opened my eyes to some interesting things that had happened in my life. Like, we talked a lot about my career path, and that when I was a kid, I used to sit in my room, and the old Bugs Bunny cartoons, when they represented like a job, you had an inbox and an outbox, and you took papers off of one thing and you wrote some stuff on it and you put it in the outbox. Yeah. Well, when I was in the mortgage business, that was the realization of my childhood dream. I had these mortgage files, and I'd take them off of one pile, and I'd write some things and put it on the other pile. Yeah. And then at that time, though, I'd already had, my vision was down the road to another thing where I'd be my own boss. And getting into that world, when I was working for a broker, but I essentially was my own boss. I was managing my own business, right? And that was a realization of a childhood dream. And I remember people saying, like, I hate my car. I wish my car would get stolen, or somebody would just destroy it or something, because I can't stand it. And lo and behold, this happened to a girl that I knew. And her car got broken into and stolen. And she was all upset. And I said, you've been asking for this for years. Yeah. It just actually happened, Yeah. But I've seen too many times that whether people pray on it or they're thinking about it and it comes to fruition, to just deny that there's not something at work well, wherever your beliefs are, there's something at work. And I couldn't give you one case because I've seen it so many times. Even simple things like if you are wanting to buy a new car and you're thinking, I want a Cadillac. It just seems like all of a sudden there's Cadillacs everywhere you look. It's not like they just all of a sudden showed up.
They've always been there.
Your eyes have just now been opened up to pay attention. And that can happen in a career or whatever it is. Now that I'm getting older, people, cousins and that are asking about, how have you managed to be successful in your marriage or your work or whatever. I said, a lot of it is dumb luck, but a small percentage is knowing to recognize the opportunity when it presents itself and take advantage of it.
Yeah.
True.
So, very true. I'm reminded of the scripture, the proverb, as a man thinketh, so is he.
Exactly. See, this is why I need to learn scripture better. I could have summed up that entire 10-minute diatribe with one line.
What are 3 things you're thankful for at this point in your life?
Well, certainly my wife, and the very close number 2 would be my entire family. I'm blessed to have kids that are healthy and smart, and sometimes even now that they're older, they still continue to amaze me when they do incredible things or they have such forethought and wisdom even at their age. But, my wife has stood by me through a lot of trials and tribulations, and, we've always said when we first got married that ultimately we're a team and we're the leaders of this team. And it's her and I first before anything else, even the kids. Yeah. Because if we can't help each other, we can't help anybody. So it was always our relationship, and that was first and foremost. And when things were tough, when we didn't have money, when we were just in a bad place mentally, it was always either I was strong and she wasn't, or she was strong and I wasn't. And that's what it's about. That's what a relationship is. It's not always perfect. But to have that companion there with you who stands by you, there's no greater blessing, because there's no way in hell I could get through this life without somebody in my arms, at times going, come on, you can do it. We have to have that,
Yeah.
And then I would say I'm blessed to have the friends that I've developed over the years. People that have come in and out of our lives, even though they're out of our lives right now, I still consider them friends. But they've been also an incredible partner to us in our lives. I'll give you another quick example. My wife's family was always the type, like, they felt like if you give me $20 in a birthday card, like, now I have to give you $20, or I have to up it, So my wife was very standoffish about friends and relationships and, giving we had so many kids and cousins and stuff. It felt like we were putting money in a card every week, and she's like, you could tell she wasn't really comfortable with that, right? And when we were at one of the lowest parts of our life financially, we literally couldn't afford food and diapers and things of that nature. And my wife we've been together so long, she only really has one friend that's not a friend of all that we both have, because we've known each other so long. She has one friend she's known since grade school. Her name's Dawn. One day, Dawn and her parents just come over to our house, and they pop the trunk of their car, and I'm like, why is Dawn in the driveway? She's like, I don't know. And they just start bringing stuff into our kitchen and putting it on the floor. She said, I know, this is going to make me cry. She goes, I know if I would have asked you, you would never take it. So the stuff's just, it's going to be in the kitchen, and if you don't take it, then that's your problem. And just brought food and diapers and formula and just dropped it there.
Wow.
And my wife said, I never understood what you meant by how important friendships were in your life. She's like, I get it now. And I could tell you multiple stories of people that have come into our lives that have done stuff like that for us, and it's been, amazing.
It's beautiful. If you were stranded on a desert island with only one movie, what would it be?
Princess Bride.
That's awesome. If you could be any animal, what would you be?
Being an eagle would be pretty cool, soaring above the clouds and whatnot.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing. So, yeah. Final answer.
Early riser, night owl, or pretty normal?
Night owl.
Yeah.
Last night being a perfect example.
Yeah. What time do you normally get up?
Depends. What's weird is I've gotten older. I've never been this kind of person, but lately, when the sun comes up around 6 o'clock or something, I just wake up, no alarm. I've never been that kind of guy.
Yeah.
My entire younger life, I was the guy who hits the snooze button 15 times, So somewhere in and around there. Depends.
Yeah. You watch documentaries at all?
I do, yeah.
Name some that you love.
It's the one I just watched. I've been addicted. There's a guy named, I don't know if it's considered a documentary, but he's got some YouTube videos named Peter Santinelli. And he does a couple series. He just did one on Hawaii. He did one on the Appalachian Trail, or the Appalachians, how it's been affected by coal mining. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you something that's rocked my world a little bit was like Cowspiracy. I don't know if you ever saw that one where it's just talks about the effects of our consumption. There's another one called Seaspiracy that talks about like what we're doing to the oceans in terms of overfishing and things of that nature. That one's crazy. You don't understand how bad it is out there, in international waters and the things that are going on. Yeah. I've watched a few of those, but
that's cool.
If my wife ever listens to this, I'll give her an eye roll because I have a tendency if I'm home and I don't have anything to watch, I'll become on Netflix, like checking for the next documentary that I'm going to talk about for the next 3 months.
If you could live anywhere, where would you live?
Other than here, because I really love it here, I would love to either live in Ireland, like northwestern coast. I found out I just recently was doing some genealogy stuff. Turns out that's where my family's from. Or somewhere like Norway, Finland, Sweden, up there, like the fjords and that. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
So those would probably be 2 areas I would check out. That's more my climate as a very pale Irishman. It probably sounds awful to people like, it's rainy all the time. Like, I love the rain. Like, I would just, in fact, I love having a cigar and a nice calming rain, a little rolling thunder in the background, and you're just sitting there enjoying a smoke. Like, it's a good place.
Nice.
Anyways.
Where's your favorite place in Colorado? If you could live anywhere in Colorado.
I don't know if I've found it yet, but, we've been up to, Aspen, Vail, Buena Vista, all around, and everywhere is beautiful. But I'd probably try to find something that has a little more rainfall. That would be nice. Because we don't, we have 335 sunny days a year here, so we don't get a whole lot of rain.
Yeah.
But, I'm not sure. I'd probably love to be in the mountains somewhere where I have a little bit of land and some peacefulness. I don't know if it matters really where.
You ever been down to the southwest corner? Uray, Silverton?
I haven't.
Oh, it's gorgeous. In my opinion, Telluride, that whole area is just stunningly beautiful.
We'll have to add that to the bucket list.
Yeah, that whole area is just gorgeous. I love going down there. It'd be a great weekend trip for the 2 of you just to go out and get like 4 or 5 days down there, explore.
Sure.
You can rent some ATVs. There's little off-road things. You can there's so many off-road trails back there to just get you back into this mountains, and it's awesome.
That's the incredible thing about this state. Like, you can go to Telluride or all these places, and it's just, every town is just gorgeous. And there's so much to do and see. I mean, there's deserts, there's alligators, you tell people there's alligators in Colorado, they're like, what?
Yeah.
There's I've climbed 9 14ers, so I've got to experience that, which is just incredible.
What's your favorite one?
I'd have to say we did Bierstadt and Ellingwood, which is down in Santa Cristo, or not Bierstadt, Blanca Peak in Ellingwood.
Yeah.
Which is down in the Santa Cristos. And we camped at Lake Como, which is at about 11,700 feet.
Yeah.
And then went from there, and I think it's probably my favorite because it was the most challenging, and being able to accomplish that, it was very self-fulfilling. So, and I was there with a lot of good friends, and it was a great experience. Then coming down, they're all cigar smokers, so when we came down, we sat by the campsite around with the lake right there, and had our dinner and our cigar, and then the next day we did a different peak. So that was cool.
That's awesome.
I like Bierstadt a lot. I think
Bierstadt's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I think it's easier, but it's. I think it's one. I've done Quandary, I've done Sherman, I've done Pikes Peak, and all those. And honestly, I thought Quandary was pretty hard, so I didn't really enjoy it. But Bierstadt was great. So,
yeah. Bierstadt. When I went and did that one, we had just gotten a lot of rain, and just the valley there was just green and lush and gorgeous, beautiful. And just seeing nature.
Yeah.
On the way down, and even stopping and taking a look on my way up. But I mean, it was a memorable one for sure.
Yeah.
What's your greatest strength and what's your greatest weakness?
Again, if my wife listens to this, I'll probably get an eye roll, but I honestly think my greatest strength is being able to connect with people.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by people. I'm fascinated by their story. I'm genuinely interested, which is why I think I connect with people so well. I really enjoy sharing experiences and learning new things and finding out what somebody did with their life. I love the format of your podcast because it's insightful to people's lives and their experiences and things they've gone through. It's always interesting to me.
Yeah.
Weakness, when my daughter was diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD, we're sitting there in the meeting and they're walking through the results and all that. And I'm sitting there going, yep, got that. Yep, that's me. Yep, 100%. I'm pretty much diagnosing myself that I am very squirrel. What's the next thing? It takes a very concerted effort to focus when I'm working on something. Sorry, work never stops, so it keeps buzzing. But yeah, so that's a struggle for sure. I'm never as productive as I'd like to be just because, especially with working in the IT business and doing stuff for the restaurant, and wanting to still be a good father and a good husband and all those things. It's, I constantly feel like I'm getting pulled in 6 different directions, and it makes it really difficult to focus. That's a tough one that I struggle with, but we're still doing okay despite that.
Who's the first person you think of when you hear the word successful?
Oh gosh. Success has such a broad meaning to me. I don't attribute success to just they appear financially successful.
Yeah.
It's why I always struggle with the idea of a mentor. Because, you hear a lot of success books and things of that nature say you got to have a mentor. You should have a mentor. Everybody has a mentor. And for years, I just didn't.
Yeah.
My father struggled with alcoholism. My mother was a beautiful person, but she wasn't as driven as I wanted to be. So I saw a lot of bits and pieces of people that I wanted to emulate, but I never found one individual or thing that I said, I look up to that person, or I want to be like that person, or that person is successful, so to speak. Because I thought successful was, a modest career, but being a successful father and a husband was also a form of success. Being a successful Christian, being good to people, putting some goodness in the world is being successful.
Yeah.
So it's a tough one for me to answer.
Who's been the greatest influence in your life?
I want to actually say probably my wife. Because she makes me a better man.
Yeah.
Because I want to be that man that deserves her love and admiration.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Don't put that in. It's too sappy. No.
What do you do for self-care, to rest, to recharge?
Oh, that's definitely cigars. I mean, it's funny because with all the stuff on my plate, you can tend to feel guilty if you take time for yourself. And that was something I had to very much learn how important that is, right? Even when I'm on the road and I'm traveling, I'm that guy who has a tendency to be in my hotel room doing emails till midnight, and I don't mind putting in the work, but I've understood that even if the reason I went to that place in Huntsville to have a smoke is I'm going to do some work and I'm going to have my cigar. And to me, that is calming, right? if I'm done with that, I can just sit there and finish my cigar and relax. If somebody happens to come in and we have a conversation, that's relaxing to me, Sometimes I'll just take time to have a cigar in my backyard, and, I could call 10 people and have them come over, but there's days where I just want to have a cigar and a cup of coffee and just sit there and stare at the mountains and just take a minute to decompress and reset your brain.
Yeah.
I've also been embracing the idea of naps. 15, 20-minute nap. Now I'm in my 50s. It helps a lot. You hit that 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock wall in the afternoon. I used to always just try and push through it, right? Now I'm like, you know what? No, I'm going to take a minute and I'm just going to, reset myself, and I have much more energy in the afternoon if I do that. Yeah.
That's cool. How do you want to be remembered?
Maybe as a uniter, somebody who brings people together. I'd love to be that guy that people looked at and, said when Jim was around, we all engaged in conversation, and he always was pulling me to a concert or pulling me to some kind of cigar event or pulling me to some other party or experience or something, because I do that a lot, and I notice even when people are like, I don't really feel like going, and then we're there and we're experiencing it, we're having a great time, everybody's like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. I wasn't going to, Conclave is a perfect example. I was not going to go on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of work, I had a lot of stuff to do for the restaurant, I could put a whole list of reasons I didn't have to be here.
Yeah.
Right? And my good friend called me. I call him Panama John. You probably remember him. He has a Panama Jack hat on.
Yeah.
And he said the same thing. He goes, when I texted you and you said you were going, then I decided I'm going to go. And that talk really spoke to both of us. We really needed it. It was perfect timing for us. So, things like that I hope I'm remembered for, where it's like, I wasn't going to do X, Y, or Z, but Jim dragged me along, and here I am, and we're having a great time.
Nice. All right, final 3 questions.
Shoot.
What does Holy Smokes mean to you, and how has it contributed to your spiritual journey?
Yeah, I feel like we touched on that a lot, but, to the friendships that I've experienced in this group will be lifelong friends for a long, long time, for the rest of my life, I hope. And the fact that we can sit here and we can talk about Christ and we can talk about our experiences, we can share our story, means everything to my spiritual life, because that's how Christ has always just been interwoven in my life, no matter what I'm doing. And I feel like that's what Holy Smokes is. We're folks, female, males, gathering, and sometimes we're just enjoying the space with one another, and developing those friendships, right? Sometimes we're having much deeper conversations, and all that, it is what I want in my spiritual journey. So it helps fulfill me, and I can't even put a price on that. I don't even know, I'm struggling with the words to express what it means to have these folks be a part of my life. So very appreciative of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who invited you? How'd you hear about it?
As I tend to do, I thought about that because I heard on one of your questions before, and I kind of invited myself.
Nice.
I was looking for a cigar lounge around here, and somebody had casually mentioned that there's the Holy Smokes group. And funny enough, I went out and I Googled it, and I came up with some old forum that looked like it was from 1994, very clunky, and not a lot of people were on it. There was no interaction. I thought, oh, well, this group probably must have been just kind of fell apart at some point. And somewhere along the line, I came across Megan and Etienne, and they were like, well, no, we got the Facebook page, that's, we're all very active. Oh, really? Oh. And so I went out there and checked, and I just started showing up on Wednesdays. And now they can't get rid of me.
Perfect. That's perfect. All right. If you could have a holy smoke with any 3 people throughout history, living or deceased, who would they be? Can't name Jesus.
I'd love to go back to some of the authors that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
Like Dale Carnegie or Napoleon Hill. And just the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with them. It just seems like the books they wrote were so insightful, Like, how do you...
And still making an impact.
Yeah. Still to this day, I think Think and Grow Rich was written in the 40s.
Yeah.
And people are still reading that book.
Yeah.
You know, I think that would be incredible. I told you about my genealogy in that when I went back far enough, there's a split off from the Lavelle family to a family called the True family, True. And one of the first came to America. It actually says in the ancestry thing, he was referred to as the immigrant, in quotes. And the True family dates back to I've only gone back now to like the 1400s in England.
Wow.
And then the Lavelle family goes all the way back to, I've gone back to like the 1600s on the Lavelle side. And then it kind of splits off into this like French and Irish. It's hard to kind of track it down, but I would love to go back and talk to some of those folks just to talk about the weird circumstance of events that had to happen for me to be here having this conversation with you right now. The folks immigrating to our country and, world wars and things that have happened that could have killed off our whole family line, and somehow, miraculously, I'm here.
Yeah.
It would just be incredible to go back and just meet them and talk to them and sit there and have a conversation and, experience what they're going through.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be fascinating. But I don't have many, answers like Socrates or something. I don't know what the right answer is, but
yeah, that's whatever's good for you.
Yeah.
So last question, if we're to meet 1 year from today, I have a bottle of Diplomatico.
Sure. We'll have to have an ambassador though, or something. We're gonna have to amp it up.
What are we celebrating?
The thing that's front of mind right now is I have a lot of work I want to get done at the restaurant. I have a vision for just amping it up to a place of gathering for families and that. So I really want to get the patio done, to do some remodeling inside.
Which, by the way, for anyone that's not in the Colorado Springs area, if you come in, you got to sit out there. If it's a nice day, you got to sit out there on the patio. Yeah. The view is stunning. It's such a great spot. I mean, you just got a view of the Pikes Peak and the Front Range, and it's just gorgeous. You can see the weather coming in, and it's just so relaxing. It's such a great location. It's a really great location.
And the thing that prevents people from sitting out there and enjoying that is usually the wind or the sun. And that's why I really just want to get it covered so people can experience that. We turn away rehearsal dinners and stuff all the time because we just can't take 40 people. But if I could heat and enclose that area and they could have a private space to gather as a family to celebrate, a husband and a wife coming together, like what an awesome type of experience to have our little place be that place. We've already had people call us and say our first date was at this place and we want to celebrate our wedding because this is where we met. That's awesome, man. To have a restaurant a location like that where you could have somebody have that kind of impact in somebody's life, just food, but man, we come together over food and breaking bread together. So I've always told my kids, I've asked them, what are we doing here at this pizza place? And they're like, serving pizzas? I'm like, no. We're creating an experience for people. Nobody goes to a restaurant when they're strapped for money and in a situation where, they've got inflation is impacting them and all these things just to get a pizza.
Yeah.
They go to a place because sometimes you do. Sometimes I just want a pizza at 11 o'clock at night and I call Papa John's, right, or something, But when you're gathering with friends that you haven't seen for a long time and that, you go to a place like Basil where you can watch the mountains and see the sunset and enjoy the time and just relax with a bottle of wine and some food. You're creating an environment for that experience. And I love watching that when I'm sitting there bartending sometimes and watching families just hang out for 2 hours. And
Jim Lavelle, thanks for being on the Holy Smokes podcast.
Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
It was good.
It's been a pleasure.
Hey everyone, I wanted to announce that we have Holy Smokes gear. That's right, we have swag. We currently have hats, shirts, stickers like for your vehicle or your travel humidor, magnets, even branded bourbon glasses for a limited time, go to holysmokes.club and click on the shop tab. That's holysmokes.club. I'm super proud of the shirts. They're made with Bella canvas shirts that are soft and incredibly comfortable. The hats fit wonderfully, which can be a problem for those of us with big noggins. We plan on having a lot more to offer, like Guayabera shirts, additional t-shirt designs, beanies, polos, hoodies, cigar accessories, and much more. Check it out. And even if you don't make a purchase now, be sure to sign up for that email list, as I've thrown a couple big discount coupon codes for those exclusively on that list. So click the shop tab at holysmokes.club. Thanks.